The last presentation tonight is from our General List Manager, Derek Hine. Up you come, Decker.
Thanks, guys. Just quickly, clearly a lot of the stuff that Bill and Buck's already touched on are all prevalent to our decision-making processes, e.g. the kick rating, aerobic capacity of athletes and so on. So it's all intertwined in terms of our decision-making processes. So what I'll try to go through to you tonight, just give you a very quick snapshot of our list profile, how it's looking in terms of the rest of the competition by forwards, mids, backs. Clearly going into this year's trade period and draft period, we're severely restricted given that we've traded away our first pick with the addition of Adam Treloar and James Ace, which the second pick was that we got back from GWS, which Gubby tried to bend me over on several occasions, but we managed to pull that one back. But so in terms of our scope going forward, in terms of bringing athletes into the organisation this year, is really threefold. It's clearly it's via the draft. Second, it's in a trading process. So obviously it picks out players in, players out, players in, and or the free agency. So our intention is to, and we'll be able to show you a little bit more in terms of the age profile of the list behind some of the decision makings that we'll be making, is to look at all three of those areas. So it's really important that we not only keep an eye on the now, but it's also the medium and long-term future. Nathan spoke about different areas of the game we need to improve on, whether it be our disposal inside 50, our ball retention in the back half. We feel that we've got two ready-made players potentially come in. There's a little bit of an unknown in terms of those athletes in Lockie and Josh. I think Buck's touched on before that myself and Barmy went up and caught up with Josh and Lockie 2 weeks ago, and previous to that another 2 months ago. But one thing I'm really pleased to report to you guys is that their preparation, their mindset, and their willingness to get back and get their hands dirty, it was second to none. We were extremely excited about their maturity. They've been out of the game now for 2 years. They're back on the December the 9th, and we're really confident given that the way they've prepared themselves to this date. Now, there's always that little bit of an unknown, obviously, where the game's gone and where they've gone. But the one thing I can guarantee you, they're absolutely prepared for the challenges in front of them. So we're really excited to be able to bring two boys in that we know that can play at the level. 204 centimetre key defender, a guy who can go through the ruck, who you've all seen. And we've all seen what Joshy can do in terms of their scope, sort of midfield forward. So they're two boys that can obviously come back in. And obviously our injury profile that Bucks and also Bill's touch on gives us some real excitement with Billy and even the guys of Faz and these sorts of blokes that have had career best seasons, Ramsey, Scharenbergs and so on. So hopefully if Bill keeps his end of the bargain and we can get all these boys out there, that we can have a real good look at them. So fingers crossed going forward. So we can flick over to those slides. We'll just sort of head through it a little bit. So this is a really quick snapshot of what we're doing in terms of the group. Our under-22 players are recognised in the elite in the competition, consistently named in the four. I think we had 6 last year if you include Adzi. I think we had 5 this year. One thing that you guys may or may not be aware, because clearly the dialogue within the media is the St Kills of the world, the Melbournes of the world, the amount of list changes they've made to their primary and rookie list. We've made more changes to our list in the period 11 to 15, and we're not including the list changes we'll make this year. In terms of actual list changes, we've made 56, which is the most of any team in the competition. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot of how we've turned the list over. Now, there's retirements in that. There's obviously just list changes through ability, trades, and so on. So, but one thing I can guarantee you, in all of our training, and I think you'll see that with the additions of Adam Treloar and Tay Adams and these sorts of guys, they're all been to a needs and they've all been fit well within our profile in terms of where we want to go in the future. 13 average games for our best 25, 15th for average game of our best 25 as well. So 40 players used this year, 6 debutants, which I think Bucks has already touched on. 40 players is equal with the Gold Coast in terms of players used in the 2016. If you have a look back around 10 and 11, if you look at the players used in the competition and clubs that have played every game, players that have played every game for the relative clubs, it was almost a direct reflection of where the ladder sat. So where we sat was basically where we were in terms of games used. If you look at Adelaide, for an example, at that point in time, they had used 27 players, of which 19 players had played every single game. So they're the sorts of things that we look at. There was 2 outliers to that. The Western Bulldogs, who were able to hold their place inside the top 8, with obviously a well-documented injury list. But outside the 8 was St Kilda, who had very little injuries, but again weren't able to make that step into the top 8. So if we just go to the next, this I'm not sure whether you guys can see that, but our 2016 depth chart, I haven't, obviously with Dane retiring and Tubes and Caff and these sorts of guys going out, we haven't sort of adjusted any of that yet because obviously with the VFL boys still in the final series, we haven't made any delistments as such. That'll obviously take place post-season, and obviously they've hopefully got a couple more weeks to go. But I suppose the main thing, the really relevant point in terms of where we sit, and again, I get back to that trading particularly the trading of the guys of Adams and Treloar and these sorts of guys, Jack Chris, James Aish and so on. We've got 34 players under 20, under 25 on the list, which sits number 1 or 2 in the competition of it. If you have a look at our profile in terms of age, games, etc., it's almost identical to the Western Bulldogs, almost identical. We only have 10 players that are sit above 26 years old. We have at the moment we have no players that sit over 30 years with the retirement of Dane. So the challenge for us and Bill, to be able to keep them all in one piece, is to be able to bring this group of 34 players, add to that group of 34 players, and bring them through as one. If you go back and you have a look at the 2002 Geelong VFL Premiership, do yourself a favour and go back to that team, Ablett, Bartel, Ling, etc. A group of 6 or 7 players all come through and played through those great years in 7, 8 and so on. And that's a challenge for us, and that's why we're so heartened to see what the VFL boys are doing at the moment. And it's all on the back of the Willses and the Crockers and the Phillipses of the world and these sorts of guys, and obviously really well coached by Dale and his group. So that gives us some real confidence when we can get a body of work into the younger boys, and supplement that with some selective trading, some selective potential free agents, and again addressing those needs that we discussed. It's really, really important for us to be able to continue that model, if you like, which we're really confident will flow on to success. In terms of our list needs this year, we've probably been, I suppose the small forward we've been really robbed of Tim Broomhead through injury. I think you guys, particularly into the 2015 season, that rounds 8 through to 15, he really was showing what he was capable as a small forward, high forward. On 3 occasions he had 25 plus possessions playing as that high forward. We know he's got the speed, we know he's got the ability at a ground level. Unfortunately for us, we just haven't been exposed to that. Even given the injury to Billy, we all know what his aerial power looks like, but sometimes I think what's severely underrated is ability at ground level. And that's not to mention Dane Swan. Even if you just look at that forward 50 in isolations, games lost this year to injury, was 79. So players who rotate through that forward 50, there were 79 games lost to injury. Obviously, Swanee was out 5 minutes into the season. We know about Billy. We spoke about Broomhead and so on and so on. So if you look at that collective group of games, a conservative guesstimate of goals lost to our forward 50 was 120 goals over the season. So there is some scope going forward. Obviously, Dane's gone, but we're really pleased with the potential of the young boys. But again, the injury profiles has really allowed us to expose some other boys and see if they're capable at the level. And we think that the boys that we've brought in, all at different stages, have shown they're capable, and of which Bucks has already touched on. So leading into this trade period, leading into this draft period, obviously the small forwards is obviously a need for us. If we're able to get ourselves in a position where we can bring one in, we'll certainly do that. Key forward, key defender, obviously is a need for us as well, and hopefully, particularly a player that can potentially go forward and back and roll through the ruck as well. So Lockie potentially coming in will solve that, but again, there is an element of unknown in terms of how he comes back after 2 years out.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Any questions there? Thank you.
Had a few more slides, but you'll keep
You got a few
going.
more slides?
No, it's all right. No,
what have you got? Sorry,
no,
mate.
Oh, you give me the arse already.
No, keep going. Keep going.
If you keep just,
We'll have graphics
we'll just,
because we're finished with sliding at
yeah,
Collingwood.
I know, it's just,
Yeah.
So again, this is just basically the profile in terms of where we sit in the competition of the average age of players used in 16. The red bars, if you like, are teams in the top 8. So again, we fit down in that bottom percentile. We'll roll through them reasonably quickly because I'm sure the guys will tell me what I'm not doing right. Average games used in 16 again, and a lot of that's got to do with our age profile. Again, in the bottom percentile. This is a really interesting one. So this is the maturity of the list. So it's a combination of games played and age. So again, if you look at that top end there, we've all. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of commentary about North Melbourne, the over 30s players and that. So if you roll back from there, if you see that group, North Melbourne, Hawthorn, Geelong, West Coast, all those mature teams sit well and truly entrenched in the top 4. And then again, down with us there with the Outliers and Bulldogs who have been able to hold their own. This is just our defender game experience. Again, the average age of the game's experience of the boys that rolled through that back half. Again, in the bottom percentile. Games experience, defender age. We really had a lack of maturity back through there. The midfielder average age, we're down in that bottom percentile, but the interesting slide is the next slide, which gives you an idea of the games that are actually in the midfield. So we're sitting in the mid-quantum, I suppose, of where our games experience is, but we've got a really young midfield. So that's a really unique balance of the two. Forwards, again with Trav and Jesse there, that rolls that up a little bit higher than what it is. And again, the age. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot on where it's all at. But as we touched on before, and I'm sure you're going to have a few questions, it's this next wave of players, the Broomheads, the Scharenbergs, the DeGoeys, the Maynards of the world, Smith, Mason Cox. It's this particular group of players that are going to really drive us. And again, so from our perspective, it's about how do we supplement these boys? How do we support these boys without exposing them to the day-to-day rigours of AFL footy, which Bill and Bucks touched on a little bit earlier.